This pre-release is from the non-UK region of the exam board, and it's from summer 2017. And it says this, the organiser of a senior citizens club arranges outings for the members. For each of these outings, a coach is hired, meals at a restaurant are reserved, and tickets for the theatre are booked. A programme is required to work out the costs and provide a printed list showing everyone on the outing. Write and test a programme for the club organiser, and basically there's 3 tasks again, always 3 tasks. And the first one is to work out the total cost of the outing. The organiser finds out how many senior citizens would be interested in the outing. The programme for task 1 works out the cost of this from this information, and you can see that depending on the number of people going, there's kind of like a tiered cost of the coach hire, cost of the meal, cost of the theatre tickets. Sounds like a nice time out though. So it says the minimum number of senior citizens is 10, and there cannot be more than 36 senior citizens on the outing. A minimum of 2 carers must go, with an additional carer needed if more than 24 senior citizens are going on the outing. Carers do not have to pay anything for the outing. Work out the total cost and the cost per person for the senior citizens. So this might seem familiar. It's a bit sort of similar to the school trip one. One of the things about this one is it's not clear whether or not the carers have to pay anything. Sorry, it says that the carers don't have to pay anything, but it's not clear whether or not, obviously we're going to have to include the cost for them. Does that make sense? So although they're not paying anything themselves, we still need to account for the cost of their meal and the fact that they're going to be on the coach as well. So I'm not going to do a flowchart for this. I don't think. No, I mean, I think this is fairly straightforward. I think what we'll do is we'll go... we'll do a flowchart and just do sort of the basics of the flowchart first. Okay, so here is the flowchart software. I'm using draw.io, again, free software on the internet that you can do your flowcharts with. And let's start off with our start. We always need a start. And obviously we're going to have an end, but we'll add that later. So the first thing we need to do is add in our input, which is going to be the number of estimated senior citizens going. So we'll just call it estimated num for number of people who they think they're going to go. And then we need to calculate the costs depending on how many people are going. So let's just put that in there, calc costs. Again, I'm doing this kind of fairly broadly, and then we can sort of drill down into the detail later. We're going to calculate the costs, and then we're going to just output the total costs. So that's fairly simple stuff. It's a very, very simple flowchart for this one, really. It's probably, I don't know, probably not quite enough detail, but there's not much here, really. The stuff we've got there in that table where the costs vary, it's kind of really just kind of like an if statement. We could probably do the pseudocode afterwards. It's a very simple task, really. So I'm just going to finish off doing this, and then we will get to coding the first part of this. So just one more arrow, and there we go. So I'm quite happy with that very basic flowchart. Let's get on to coding this. Okay, so with this task, we need to enter how many senior citizens they believe are going to be going on this trip. So we need to input that data. So I'm going to call it estimated number of seniors. Estimated number of seniors. I'm going to set it to be 0. Do I need to set it to 0? No, probably not actually. Let's just dive straight in and get user input actually. So this is an estimate as well, so I'm just going to put estimate. Okay. And we need to validate that. So it said we needed to validate it. There's a minimum number of 10 people to go on this trip and a maximum number, I think it was 39. Let's just double check that. Yes, so we've got a minimum number of 10 and a maximum number of 36. So that's going to be in our if statement. Obviously, if we're checking a value, we need an if statement. We can't use a loop because loop just repeats something. So we've got a minimum number of seniors, and that's 10. So I'm creating this as a variable, and we've got a maximum number of seniors, and that's 36. And the reason why I'm creating a variable to store those values is in the exam they quite often ask you about what's called constant values. I know if you've watched my other videos you'll have heard me talking about constants. Constants are like variables, but once the program is running you cannot change the value, and they have a very good purpose. They're actually very useful. So what we do here in Python, because Python doesn't have constants, we just mimic that with a variable. Okay, so I'm just going to label those as constants. Okay, so now let's do our check the value. So we can say if the estimated number of seniors is less than the minimum number of seniors, or the estimated number of seniors is greater than the maximum number of seniors, i.e. 36, then we're going to produce an error. Okay, good. Now that's all very well. That should work fine. I haven't tested it yet. Well, actually, let's test it now. So I've got it running. Let's put in 4. So that's too few people. It needs to be at least 10. Great. Too many or too few going. So let's then test if there's too many. So I'll put 45. Great, that's worked as well. And finally we'll get one where it's between those two values, and I'll just put 15, and that's fine, no error message. Good. Now that's all very well. If they enter something that's incorrect, we have this problem that the rest of the code is then going to run. We haven't written the code yet, but we need to think, hang on a minute, we need to make sure that they enter the right number, because we can't be doing anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a small while loop, which is going to force the user to enter a value that's correct, which is between 10 and 36. So I'm going to have a variable called isValid, and I'm going to set that to false, and I'm going to say while isValid is equal to false, then we're going to make the user enter a value. So we need to select all of that and just tab it forward one lot like that. And then if there is no error, we can put else here, isValid is equal to true. So what that while loop does is it will run that while loop until they enter a value between 10 and 36. Okay, so let's just test that and make sure it's okay. So the number of senior citizens going, so let's have a value where it's too small, too many or too few, so let's add 45 again. Great, so it's out of the boundaries, that's fine, and if I enter one where it's fine, great, that's finished. Okay, so that's validated my entry for the number of senior citizens going. Now we can move on. So the next part of the task 1 is to work out the costs, basically, for the total cost and the cost per person for the senior citizens. And that's going to assume that if they've got carers going, that they have to swallow the cost of the carers and they get to share that out. Okay, so we've got a few different lines here. Basically, we know that if we've got between 12 and 16 people going, what the costs are here. If we've got between 17 and 26 going, that's the cost there. And then finally, if we've got 27 to 39 going, then that's the cost there. And that's basically because obviously, although we could only got a maximum of 36 going, we could potentially have 3 carers going as well. So the thing we need to do here is think about what data are we storing. The first thing is we need to store how many carers are going, because if there's a minimum of 2 carers going on the outing, that's fine, but there could be 3. So let's handle that first. So we're going to create a variable which is going to be called carers, and we know we have to have 2. So I'm going to set that to 2. And then we need to say if the number of estimated seniors going is greater than, how many was it? It was, if we've got more than 24 going, then we need another carer going. So let's change that to our if statement. So if the estimated number of seniors going is greater than or equal to 24, then the number of carers is going to be 3. Okay, so that handles that. So now we need to think about what else are we storing. Well, we're going to have to store, we've got the number of people going because that's what the user has entered, but each one of these columns is something else that we need to store as well as the overall cost. So the first one is the hire of the coach. So we need to create a variable to store the cost of the hire of the coach. So I'm just going to call it coach, and I'm just going to set that to be 0. The other thing we need to store is the cost of a meal. So let's add that in. Actually, I've changed my mind. Actually, I'm going to call that coach cost, and then meal cost, and I'm going to set all of these equal to 0. And then the last one is the theatre ticket price as well. So I'm just going to create another one called theatre cost. All set to 0. And then what we do is after we've got the data as to how many seniors are going, then we can use that data to work out which cost bracket we're going to use. So basically for each one of these rows in this table, we can say if the number of people going is between 12 and 16 inclusive, then we're going to set the hire of the coach to 150, the cost of the meal equal to 14, and the cost of a theatre ticket equal to 21. So let's do that. So we can say if the estimated number of seniors going is greater than or equal to, what's the first bracket? It is 12 to 16. Now, that's interesting actually. Before I do that, interesting to see how the minimum number of people who can go on the trip is 10, but it starts off here, the number of people going is between 12 and 16, and that's because of the carer amount. So actually, before I start doing this, I need to add on the number of carers onto the number of people going. So let's do that so that we get the true value of the data. So we can say the estimated number of seniors equals the estimated number of seniors plus the carers. Okay, now we could have created a new variable here, but I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to leave that as, yeah, I'm just going to change it and add the number of carers on. Okay, so now we can actually start doing that, that table. So we can say if the estimated number is greater than or equal to 12 and the estimated number of seniors is less than or equal to, it was 16, then we can set the cost of everything, the cost of the coach. I'm just going to paste that in. The cost of the coach, cost of the meal, and the cost of the theatre ticket is going to change, and they are 150, 14, and 21. So that is 150, 14 for the meal, and 21. Now, actually, they've got those as floats, but in Python it doesn't matter, we can just do it as whole numbers. Oh, actually, yeah, so later on we might need to do that, but Python will handle that, so that's fine. Okay, so now we can say elif the estimated number of seniors is greater than or equal to, and it should be 17. So our brackets here are 17 to 26, so let's change that. So 17 and 26. Then our costs are going to change again, so let's add those in. I'm just going to cut and paste because it's easier. And our costs are 190, 13.50 and 20. So that's 190, 13.50 and 20. So obviously normally, and this is quite normal, is, you know, the more people who go, generally speaking, the costs will go down a little bit. Okay, so that's the second one, and now the third one is 27 to 39. So Elif $39. Okay, good. And then our costs are, so our costs are 225, 13 and 19. Okay, so let's print those out at the bottom here as well. Let's print out the cost of the coach, just as some debug, and just check to see if it's all kind of worked okay. So I'll just do it as I put coat there. Look at that. That would have caused an error. And theatre cost. Great. Okay, so let's run that. So if we've got 10 people going, the cost should be, oh, I've already got an error, look, a name error. So name error means I spelt a variable incorrectly. So let's see, I've got one here. It thinks in that print statement I've got meal cost. Yeah, I've got coast there, look. I keep putting coat. That's not very good, is it? I put it as coat up there as well. You probably spotted that while I was doing this and thinking, no, she's going to go. It doesn't matter. Right, so that's fine. These errors happen all the time. Let's just run that then. And I'm just going to move my window slightly smaller so you can see it. There we go. Okay, so let's try again. Let's try 10. So we should have a coach cost of 150, 14 and 21 for the meal ticket. So that's good. That's perfect. So let's try running it again. It's always good to check every branch of your if statement, even if you think it's okay. So the next one is between 17 and 20 something. So I'll put 22 people going, and the costs are 190, 13, 15, 20. So that's right too. And let's run it one more time, and we've got 36 people going, which is a maximum. Perfect. So that all works okay. Great. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to work out the total cost and the cost per person for the senior citizen. So that's actually quite easy. So all we need to do is we need to print out the total cost. So the total cost is going to be the number of estimated students. Actually, let's save that as well. So I'm actually going to create my variable up here at the top. It's always a good idea to put variables at the top. And I'm just going to put that variables because these are not constants. So the total cost of trip and also cost per senior citizen. Okay, so let's work that out. So the total cost is going to be how many people are going, and that's including the carers. So the estimated number of seniors times 13 plus, so that's the cost of the meal for everybody, plus the cost of the theatre tickets. Now I've put 13. Why have I put 13? I put so not quite sure why I did that. So the total cost is going to be the total coach cost. Let's start again. Let's try that bit again. So the total cost is the coach cost plus the number of estimated seniors, which includes the carers, times by the meal cost. And I'm just going to bracket those off so that we know that we need to calculate that first. And also the number of seniors going, including the carers, times the theatre cost. Okay, good. Got there. So let's just print that out. Print the total cost of the trip is going to be this. And also, we need to print out and work out how much it is per person or per senior citizen going, because they're absorbing the cost. They're paying for the carers to go as well. So the cost per senior citizen is going to be the total cost divided by how many people are going, which includes the carers. We might need to round that value, so but we'll sort that out in a moment. Cost per senior citizen. Okay, so let's test that, see if we get any errors. Okay, so I've got invalid syntax there, and that is because I've missed out a comma on that line of code there. So in my print statement, I needed to put a comma. So I'm just going to add that in, and we're good to go. So let's try with 10 people going and seeing how much. Oh, and we've got an error. So this says name error, meal cost undefined. So I've spelt meal cost incorrectly, or rather it should be a capital C there, I think. Yeah, so let's change that. So always don't ever panic or worry if you've got an error. These things happen. Main thing is you can work out what it is. So let's try a 10. Great, there we go. So the total cost of the trip is $570. The cost per senior citizen, $47.50. And obviously this is dollars because it's an international board and they like you to use dollars. I'm just going to test again, just with some higher number of people going. So we could have 35 people going, and that will be £37. Okay, so you can see there we've got a really long floating point number there. So we can just round that off. I'm going to put that on where we work out the cost per person, and I'm just going to round that to the nearest 2 decimal places, which would be, you know, for money, it would be cents or pence or whatever. And I'll run that again. And it was, how many did I enter for that one? 35. Perfect. Great. So that's task 1 all done.